Hello and welcome. You're with me here on another episode of the Global Reset. You're with us here on CNBC TV18 Prime. This is the program where we every day try and provide you a nuanced understanding of the complex issues shaping our global landscape. There's enough and more happening, no shortage of news flow. We'll be speaking today to two trade experts. Biswajit Dhar is head of Center for WTO Studies at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. And we'll also be speaking with Abhijit Das, who is an international trade expert and the former head of the Center for WTO Studies. Those conversations coming up in just a bit. But as always, let me just quickly lay out the context for our viewers. And let me tell you why we'll be largely focusing on trade as a theme. Actually, we'll split it into two parts. In the first half, we'll talk about India-UK. It's an important day in that regard. And then in the second segment, we'll talk about India-US. And there's a question mark there. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in the United Kingdom. This is for a pivotal two-day trip to primarily focus on the India-UK Free Trade Agreement, which I'll get to in just a moment with our guests. On the agenda for the day, the Prime Minister is expected to engage in bilateral and delegation-level talks with UK Prime Minister Starmer. He will also hold a meeting of key business leaders from India and the UK. Commerce and Industry Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, will also be present along with PM Modi for signing of the landmark India-UK FTA later in the evening. The Prime Minister is expected to call on His Majesty King Charles III and would then depart to Mali. But that's the program. That's largely the program. And I think we'll start to get in about an hour, 2 hours or so, some visuals out of all of this straight from the UK. Let me get you the details of the trade agreement deal. And to help us do that, my colleague Parikshit is now joining in with some of the specifics which we've heard from our side and, of course, the UK as well. Parikshit, take it away.
Well, the big headline is that India will be reducing tariffs on UK products at an average level from 15% currently to 3% once this FTA is implemented, once the UK Parliament ratifies it. In terms of access for UK goods, UK's cosmetics, Scotch whisky, gin, UK lamb, soft drinks, they are likely to get better access to the India market, even automobiles for that matter. On the auto sector, advanced cars coming in from the UK, especially electric vehicles, will see a 10% tariff, but this is not going to come into effect immediately. It will come into effect in a graded manner, and there will be quotas for a certain number of vehicles which will enjoy a zero duty or a reduced duty access to the India market. Now, coming to marine exports, the FTA will eliminate tariffs on 99% of marine exports from India, including shrimp, tuna, fish meal, and feeds. Tariffs on Indian leather and footwear eliminated from 16% to zero. Duties on Indian textiles will be reduced from 12% to zero. India's footwear, textiles, leather exports to UK to get preferential access over Bangladesh, Pakistan and Cambodia. Tariff on engineering goods will be reduced from 18% to zero. India's generic medicines market to get a boost with zero duty access to the UK market. Gems and jewelry, toys, plastics and chemicals, all of them will benefit from tariff relaxation through this FTA, and the Indian MSMEs, Indian workers, Indian businesses in this sector will benefit. The FTA will also support movement of professionals in critical and emerging technologies and digital trade. There is a separate chapter on innovation and how the mobility agreements should support innovation between the two countries. There will be zero duties on 95% of agriculture and processed food tariff lines. So you'll have duties eliminated on India's agri-exports of fruits, vegetables, cereals, pickles, spices, processed foods, ready-to-eat foods, but dairy, apples, oats, edibles oils, wheat, rice, maize, these will not be included in the free trade agreement, as these are red lines for India.
Parikshit, thank you very much for that. On the back of the historic trade deal that is about to be signed, Prime Minister Starmer, the UK Prime Minister Starmer, said, our landmark trade deal with India is a major win for Britain. It will create thousands of British jobs across the UK, unlock new opportunities for businesses and drive growth in every corner of the country, delivering on our plan for change. He added, we are putting more money in the pockets of hardworking Brits and helping families with the cost of living, and we're determined to go further and faster to grow the economy and raise living standards across the country. Well, let's bring in our guests now. We have, as I said, Biswajit Dhar, Head of Center for WTO Studies at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. And we have Abhijit Das, an international trade expert and former head of the Center for WTO Studies. Thank you both for joining us. Mr. Dhar, if I can come to you first, could you, begin by sort of outlining for us what do you make of what you've heard from the UK so far? As Parikshit also outlined, 15% earlier, 3% now.
No, I think this is a major deal for India, and this is the first the FTA, a full-blown FTA that we are doing with an advanced country. So there are a lot of opportunities for sure. What Parikshit just underlined, but all these market access opportunities that are being offered by the UK, that will have to be taken advantage of by the Indian industry. And that's an issue that will have to be looked at very carefully, at home. Because in other FTAs as well, what we have found is that although our trade partners have provided us with additional market access, our in manufacturing sector, our businesses have not been able to take advantage, and therefore many of these FTAs have not worked to India's advantage. So I would say that while this provides a lot of opportunities for us, the ball is now fairly and squarely in our court, and you have to ensure the government and the business will have to ensure that we make the most of what is being offered to us.
Is there prima facie from what we've seen? Is there something starkly different from what we thought it would be earlier? I mean, in terms of the rates, Mr. Dhar, or no? This is broadly what it was supposed to be.
No, I think this is expected because these kinds of reductions were expected. It was very clear that whichever country we are doing these FTAs with now, they would expect deep cuts in tariffs from us. They really want large market access, without which, of course, there is no point for them to actually do FTA with us. So I think this is along expected lines. But then, as I said, there are lots of challenges that our businesses, especially the MSMEs, which Parikshit was mentioning, the advantage. They will have to sort of gear up and make most of the opportunities.
Mr. Das, thank you for joining us, sir. Your first thoughts?
Thank you for having me on your show. At the time when global trade is in turmoil, it's very heartening to note that two of the largest economies can come together and finalize a trade agreement. So that's something very positive. As Biswajit has mentioned, there will be opportunities which will be created, and it's up to the Indian businesses to take advantage of these opportunities. But let me highlight one important aspect over here. Are the two important aspects. The total gain in India's exports of goods and services taken together on account of the FTA is likely to be about $1 billion each year. And this is a figure which has been calculated by the UK government. And given the fact that our total exports of goods and services are about $825 billion, this may not even be a drop in the ocean. So we have to temper our optimism about the surge in India's exports on account of the FTA. And even this likely increase in exports, particularly of goods, can get undermined if UK goes ahead and imposes a carbon tax on some of key Indian exports. So we have to bear both these aspects in mind. However, my concerns on the FTA arise from other aspects, for example, government procurement, where we have gone beyond the concessions that we had granted to UAE. We are going to be treating the UK suppliers at par with the Category 2 Class 2 Indian suppliers, provided the UK content in the supplies about at least 20%. Now, the rest 80% could come from anywhere, including China. And if we are talking of goods being procured by the Indian government as part of government procurement, there is a high risk of Indian manufacturers getting displaced in government procurement. We are not aware of the details as yet, but going by what is on the website of the UK government, we also appear to have made some concessions on non-trade areas such as labor, gender, and environment. We have to see what precisely we have, what ground we have conceded. But what is very clear is that we have opened a door a bit, which can get prized open further in subsequent FTAs. And we might end up tying our hands substantially on account of some of these commitments in non-trade areas, which might not be legally enforceable today in this FTA, but in future FTAs, this might become legally enforceable. So those are my initial thoughts.
Mr. Das, that $1 billion, you're saying that's the net boost to exports for India?
Yes, let me explain that a bit. The calculation of the UK government is simple, straightforward. They have looked at two scenarios: the present trend in exports minus the FTA, and where would the exports be in 2040 once the FTA gets implemented. And the UK government says that by 2040, on account of FTA, the bilateral trade will increase by 25 billion pounds. And how these 25 billion pounds will be shared between the two sides is 15 billion pounds of export gains to UK, 10 billion pounds of export gains to India. And that will happen by 2040. Now, if you spread it over the intervening period, it roughly comes to about $1 billion increase in our exports of goods and services taken together.
Oh, got that. You know, what we're going to do is, actually, we could go on with for a bit more. Maybe I'll take one more question, Mr. Dhar. You know, we will have to wait for details, right? Line by line. I mean, an FTA like this, we'll have to kind of look at this in granular detail because we have the headline numbers at this point. A lot may, I mean, the detail, as they say, the devil in the detail. We'll have to wait for it?
No, absolutely. I think, you know, here we just have a skeleton, just a kind of a bare bones. And like for instance, in case of automobiles, and that's a big give from India's side. Automobiles has always been a red line as far as all these FTA negotiations have been concerned for India. Now we have agreed to bring down our tariffs on automobiles. We have brought talked about bringing it down to 10%. But then, as Parikshit said, that there's going to be a tariff rate quota. So that's going to be very important for us because, what is the extent to which, British cars are going to find their access in India? That would, and these tariff rate quotas could actually determine what we are going to be facing in the US FTA. And, so I think, in a way, I would say that the finer details that are going to be coming, soon enough, I think, will pave the way for what we are going to be seeing in the US-India FTA as well. I think it's a very important, it will be very important for us to look at the finer details. And really, the devil would lie in the details, and let's see how it goes. Again, I would like to emphasize the point that Abhijit made, that of course we are giving in on labor and environment and agreeing to accepting the implementation of the ILO core conventions on labor standards, which we are not doing at this point, and that would be an issue for us, especially because India is always looking to export labor-intensive products, where there is always a concern that we are not playing by the rules set by the ILO.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mr. Dhar and Mr. Das, thank you for sort of running us through the India-UK scenario. We'll have to wait for details, and maybe later today we'll get some more details because there are some events planned, and we'll be able to sort of, speak to people from their business leaders have traveled along with the government delegation, and we'll sort of have the full programming coming up later. We'll slip into a break and we come back with both our guests and talk about India-US, where there is still no deal, maybe at least not till the 1st of August. There's a US delegation supposed to visit, post that deadline. So where do we stand there? Coming up. Welcome back to the Global Reset. You're with us here on CNBC TV18 Prime. Well, we spoke about India-UK, the deal. The other side of the world, actually, trade deal talks are underway between the US and other countries. The US and European officials signal progress in tariff talks. The US president also touted a recent deal between the US and NATO, whereby, of course, European allies would purchase weapons and, of course, send them to Ukraine as it fights Russia. Listen in.
Just made a deal with the European Union where they're going to pay the United States of America 100% of the cost of all military equipment. They're going to ship it to the European Union, and then they'll distribute it, and much of it will go to Ukraine. It's been a long time since you've heard those words, because we're in for $350 billion, but now we send it to Europe, and Europe pays. And
well, Trump also had something to say about trade talks with China. Listen in.
We're in the process of completing our deal with China. And as you know, the UK, we made a deal. It was a very good deal for everybody. Everybody's happy. It's always nice when everybody can be happy. But mostly we'll be charging straight tariffs to most of the rest of the world, because we have over 200 countries. People don't realize that's a lot of deals. Even if you're like me, a deal junkie, that's a lot of deals. That would be too much for anybody. Ooh. And we're making deals with various Asian countries that need it. And it's actually hard to believe, you don't think of it, but Asia is very close to Alaska, relatively speaking. It's not the closest, but it is pretty much the closest when it comes to oil and gas and energy. And we're making some incredible deals. The opening up of a country is very important to us. We have numerous countries that have opened their doors, just made some incredible transactions, but we're going to have a very, very simple tariff for some of the countries. We have so many countries, you can't negotiate deals with everyone, so we'll have a straight, simple tariff of anywhere between 15 and 50%. A couple of we have 15 because we haven't been getting along with those countries too well, so we just say, let's pay 50, and that's the way it is. But remember, we get countries that were closed, always closed. Everyone in this room would never remember any of them to be open. We've offered such a deal to the European Union, where we're in serious negotiations, and if they agree to open up the union to American businesses, then we will let them pay a lower tariff.
He went on to also sort of reiterate his push as far as U.S. Technology is concerned. Local hiring, saying, and I quote, "The days of hiring workers from India, end of quote, are over." Listen in.
For too long, much of our tech industry pursued a radical globalism that left millions of Americans feeling distrustful and betrayed. And you know that. Everybody knows that. Everybody in this room certainly does. Many of our largest tech companies have reaped the blessings of American freedom while building their factories in China, hiring workers in India, and slashing profits in Ireland. You know that. All the while dismissing and even censoring their fellow citizens right here at home. Under President Trump, those days are over. We need U.S. technology companies to be all in for America. We want you to put America first. You have to do that. That's all we ask.
Well, these are pretty strong words, right? Not that we've not heard this stuff before, but this in the context of the fact that when we're still sort of waiting for, not waiting, but we are in the midst of continued negotiations for some sort of a deal with the U.S. Mr. Das, if I can come to you, what do you make of it? And how do you read these statements?
Let's have no illusions. The deals that President Trump has signed so far, particularly those with Vietnam, Indonesia, and Japan, are, to my mind, largely one-sided, with the benefits being absolutely slanted, tilted in favor of the United States. In fact, President Trump has compelled Japan to give up its long-held position in protecting the rice sector. And in respect of Indonesia, it has, again, compelled Indonesia to give up its long-held position on something called moratorium on customs duties on electronic transmissions. So Trump is bothered just about the interests of US. I don't think the interests of other countries are being taken into account. The partner countries appear to be happy with giving zero duty access to US into their markets, while they will get tariffs higher than 19%. I think these are not good times at all. And Indian negotiators, I'm sure, have been negotiating very hard, but the path for them ahead is going to be extremely difficult. And I do have hope that the government has a plan B in its pocket, whereby if the terms which President Trump offers, if these are found to be too onerous and not aligned with our national interest, the government can walk away from the negotiating table and at the same time also take further action to protect the domestic interest.
So wise to kind of sort of hold out, right, Mr. Das?
Absolutely, it's very wise to hold out and not given to what President.
What happens on the 1st of August, though, according to you?
We don't know. President Trump has a record of making announcements going back. So it would be very difficult to do crystal ball gazing and speculate whether he would impose the 26% reciprocal tariffs on India, or he would impose something much higher than that. I guess even President Trump at this juncture may not be knowing what he's likely to do on 1st August.
Mr. Dhar, you'd agree with what you heard?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that we have heard from President Trump repeatedly is that he said that his left hand doesn't know what his right is doing. So clearly he's not. We can't anticipate what he's going to do. But absolutely, I agree with Abhijit 100% that India must hold out. And I think it is very important for India to recognize, and something that China has done as well, that without access to large markets like India's and China's, President Trump's project of MAGA, the Make America Great Again, is not going to be realized. And he also realizes that as well. So I think we need to understand that, President Trump can't do without our large market. And we can't give it for free. We can't just, give all the things that is wanting in agriculture and the cereals market, because there is a very big push from, the grain lobby, U.S. grains lobby, to get India's market. And that can't happen. You can't do a trade deal. And what President Trump is doing is that these are all unilateral deals that Abhijit talked about. And his narrative says that, he's only going to be looking at the interest of American farmers, ranchers, businesses. And in any trade deal, there has to be a bilateral trade deal, there has to be give and take. And if reciprocity is not there, he can't talk about a trade agreement, a bilateral trade agreement. Then it becomes unilateral trade agreement. It becomes unilateral imposition. And what I also must emphasize here is that what we are seeing is a complete reversal of what we saw, the principles on which the multilateral trading system function. There, we saw that the developed countries provided preferential market access to the developing countries, allowing the developing countries, the lesser developed countries, to grow. What President Trump has done, he's turned the whole thing on his head. He's now seeking preferential access for American products in developing country markets, rather all over the world. especially developing country markets. And that's a strict no. And I think that's against any norm of, sort of any norm of fairness in international law. And I think we need to, understand this very well. And we can't allow a situation to happen where our interests, our farmers' livelihoods and food security can be undermined, and the American, sort of agribusiness can be allowed to romp over Indian markets.
Well, the times we live in, right? Mr. Dhar, Mr. Das, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us as we continue to track the latest, what is sort of coming out. And every day is new, something or the other. As I think, Mr. Das said, no one knows what is coming on the 1st of August. But, well, does Mr. Trump know? Perhaps not really. We'll see. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of the Global Reset. Thank you very much for staying with us over the last 30 minutes. More coming up in just a bit.